Yo, what's up? My name is UndaSkore and I'm a music producer, and honestly, I hate learning music theory. Over the last 16 years, I've taught myself how to play guitar and piano by basically just learning how to play my favorite songs. And eventually I realized that a lot of these songs actually use the same chord progressions as their foundation. So today I'm going to show you some of the most popular, easy and effective chord progressions in a few different genres to hopefully help all you producers out there that are the same as me and struggle with theory. So let's dive straight in. So we're going to start off with a couple of chord progressions from pop, but this basically just covers like all genres throughout the last 100 years or so. So we're going to start off with the 1-5-6-4, which is a progression which I am sure you have heard in at least one song in your life, unless you like only listen to some weird sort of genre that I have never even heard of. So to show you this, I'm just going to work in the C major scale, which is all white notes, so it'll keep it simple for me. And the 1-5-6-4 is basically the first, the fifth, the sixth and the fourth chord in the C major scale. So obviously it's in the major scale, so it sounds really nice and happy, and you should recognize some songs from that progression, but if not, it's in tracks like Journey, Don't Stop Believin', Miley Cyrus, Wrecking Ball, and Adele, Someone Like You. So yeah, instantly recognizable. Obviously sometimes it's not so obvious that that's the progression you're hearing, because you can use lots of different inversions and add in variations to the progression. So that's the exact same progression, but I'm just playing with inversions so that the chords are closer together and it's easier to play, but you still have the same emotion and same feeling from the progression. So that's the 1-5-6-4, the most popular progression that you'll ever hear in your lifetime, I can guarantee you. There's a really famous song by a band called Axis of Awesome called 4 Chords, where they basically demonstrate how all of these famous songs are using that same chord progression. Check out that video if you haven't, it's really entertaining and it's really eye-opening as well.
Can you hear this fucking dog barking from next door?
Now a good thing about the 1-5-6-4 is that those chords can be interchanged and it will still sound good. So another really good chord progression in pop music, which is known as the 50s progression, is very similar to this, and all you're doing instead is a 1-6-4-5. So in this example it's the C major up to the A minor this time, down to F major, up to G major. And you hear this in a lot of love songs especially. It's known as the 50s progression because it was obviously used a lot in the 50s. So probably the most famous example of this progression that you would know would be Stand By Me by Benny King. So if you ever pick up a guitar, sit down at the piano and you want to like show off to your friends like popular songs, just play the 1-5-6-4, the 1-6-4-5, and you can instantly have them singing along to songs that you don't actually know how to play. A quick tip if you want to get more into this, by the way, is to check out the circle of fifths. This is something that's really big when it comes to music theory. It's one of those weird things that can really help you out in so many different ways. There's plenty of videos on YouTube that you can check out about this, but just know that learn the circle of fifths, understand what you can do with it, and you'll be able to instantly create really good chord progressions. So let's make a quick easy pop beat using the 1-5-6-4. Got to the A, just change the middle note, and I think we'll also add in a 7th note as well, just to make it a bit more interesting. And then copy it and go down to the F, just change that back to a major, and we'll keep a 7th note for that as well. So now this will be the progression. And now what we're going to do is just copy this over into an analog lab, and we'll just use this key sound to layer the same progression. Now I'll just throw in some random samples that are in the same key of C major. And then throwing in some quick drums, we'll just use a hi-hat loop. And then just a quick clap and a basic kick. Then for a final touch, we'll just record in some electric guitar. Alright, so the next genre we're going to look at is going to be trap. If you listen to Travis Scott, you know he's made some of the best trap albums of all time, and a lot of his songs use the same couple of progressions. First one we're going to go over is in the minor scale, and it's a 1-5. Really simple, so if we're working in C minor this time. So Travis Scott uses this all the time. And again, obviously you can play it differently with inversions, and he uses that in some of his tracks as well to make sure that it's not always the same progression he's using. This is definitely one of my favourite progressions to use because one, it's obviously so damn simple, but B, you can really get a few different sort of emotions from it. Obviously the main thing is it's quite dark, which you'd expect from being in the minor scale, of course. So another trap progression that again Travis Scott basically abuses all the time is going to be the 5-6 in the minor scale. Now if you do know music theory, you might want to argue with me about how it's a 1-2 in a Phrygian scale, but I don't want to hear any of that BS. We're trying to keep it simple today. So basically the 5-6 in the minor scale, assuming we're working in C minor, the 5 is going to be the G. So if I play the two chords, I'm sure you'll recognize immediately from a lot of Travis Scott tracks. So yeah, Travis Scott uses that all the time. Tracks like RIP Screw. And of course, my favourite track by him, 90210. Now the final progression we're going to go over for trap music is basically cheating, but it's having no progression at all. Yeah, there's so much trap music, so many darker beats where you just play in one chord or just sticking around the root note. There's no progression to it. It just always sounds darker, less melodic. It's really good for the sort of beats where you just need a rapper to go ham, because then it doesn't really distract the listener with the progression. It just sets a nice base for the artist to do their thing. So now let's make a beat combining these progressions. So C minor chord. Naturally, what I think we'll do is the first time it will be a lower octave, and then we'll copy it over, and then the second time we can maybe just put up the G. So now it just has a nice bit of variation to it, but it's still just a 1-5. Now again, let's just throw in some random samples. Then it's nice little guitar phrase one shot that I've just changed each one to match the progression. Do a basic simple trap drum bounce. And then finally we just use the reliable spins 808, and we're just following the progression, just going from the C to the G, C to the G. And then just to show you what I mean about having no progression. Now before we move on to the final genre, I just want to show you a couple of resources that I've been using recently that are quite helpful. So if you Google hook theory songs with the same chords, they have basically got a chord progression builder, and it will show you what songs use the same progressions that you come up with here. So it's a really useful tool just to study other songs and also see what the sort of usual progressions are. Another resource is chord.com, which is an AI tool for chord progressions. So let's just say the first chord we want to change, and we're going to make it A minor. Now we press the next one, AI suggestion, and then it gives you a bunch of different chords, and you can change, edit, refresh, do whatever you want. But basically it can just help you come up with different chord progressions really quickly, and then you can actually export these as MIDI to drag it into your DAW. Just keep in mind, to do this you need to sign up for a free trial, but I think it's worth taking a look at. Okay, so next up we're going to move on to R&B, and this is where things get really tricky. And to be honest, I find it sort of best to throw out the rule book and just go by vibe and what sounds good, essentially. So there's a few tips which I think are important in R&B. The first of which is you want to use a lot of 7th chords and 9th chords. Another tip that I think works well for this genre is you want to use a lot of passing chords and borrowed chords from other scales, and that's just going to give it a lot more of an R&B feel. So to demonstrate, the first progression we'll do is going to be a 4-1 in the minor scale. So for this, let's say we're working in A minor, so we can just use all the white notes, keeping it simple. What we're going to do is start off with a 9th chord. Basically, as it says, you're doing the triad, then you add in the 7th, then you add in the 9th. So because we're working in A minor, this is going to be the 1. So what we need to do is move this up to the 4, which is going to be the D. And then we copy it over and it will go down to the 1, which will be the A minor. Really simple, but you would have heard this thousands of times in R&B. Songs like Over It by Summer Walker. Or Like I Want You by Giveon. Now, to show you what I mean by passing on borrowed chords, what we're going to do is have a gap where we shorten the first D minor 9th chord, and in this gap we're going to put a passing chord, which is going to be a borrowed chord, because it's not going to be just from the A minor scale. So for this, let's throw in an E major chord and make it a 7th. Now if we play it, you should instantly recognize that progression because it's so common when it comes to these sort of R&B tracks. Now the next progression I think is the most important progression that there is for this genre, and that's the 2-5-1. This is one of those progressions that has been multi-purposed for years and years in so many different ways, and there's a lot of artists that use it quite a lot. For example, Tyler the Creator and a lot of his softer stuff uses this quite often. Another couple of tracks that use this progression is Say So by Doja Cat. And Big Popper by Biggie Smalls. So as an example, the 2-5-1, we're working in a major scale. Let's say that we're working in C major. We're going to use the D minor, which is obviously the 2nd degree of the scale, and then go up to the G major, which is the 5th, and then the C major as the 1. And then again, to make it more R&B feeling, you can add in the 7th. Now, an often used trick with the 2-5-1 is that it's not always used as the sole progression. A lot of the time it's used as a sort of filler or a passing progression in spaces. So to put this into practice, I'm going to do a completely different R&B progression, but use the 2-5-1 at the end of the progression to bring it back to the beginning. So let's start off with a C major 9th. So just a really nice, lush, beautiful sounding chord. Good place to start. The next chord we'll do, B augmented 7th. This is another really common chord in R&B. The next we'll do a B minor 7th. And then now at the end of the progression in this space, we want to do the 2-5-1. So what we're going to do is the 2, 5, and then the 1 is going to be the first chord. So for the 2-5-1, let's just do them as 7th chords. So that's the 2, 3, 4, 5. And then we'll actually drop this down an octave. Just to finish it off, we're going to do some inversions, and that's going to give it that final sort of classic R&B sound. So now after all of that, this is what we're left with. So now hopefully you can understand what I meant when I said that R&B is quite tricky. You've got to use a lot of inversions, use some 7th chords, some 9th chords, use some passing chords, some borrowed chords, and then you can get some really cool lush sounding progressions like this.